Uh, I have to do my recap, of course, for anybody who's joining us for the first time today. And that is that, of course, that we have, a really big focus here on the microbes in soil and how they really are the ones responsible for growing healthy plants, healthy people, and a healthy planet. And you probably already heard me say by now that microbes really are like the Uber Eats delivery system of the soil, and that they have a special language, that they interact, that they communicate with the plant, and the plant will ask for special things that it needs, special nutrients. It'll put in orders, and the key here is that each microbe in the soil, in fact, the air of the plant, which ultimately should be totally covered with healthy, beneficial microbes, has niche role. Really can only fill one type of menu pizza request that perhaps the plant asks for. So the reason that's critical to appreciate is that we always want to ensure that our soil has as much diversity as possible, and that is microbial diversity is ultimately what we're trying to achieve, so that whatever little niche role is required, the right organism is ready and waiting. And then ultimately the way that we help to ensure that is by using diversity in all our regenerative practices. So whether it's diversity in terms of the inputs that we're adding, the different types of mulch, for example, whether it's diversity in the crops that we're growing, where we're growing them, and certainly, of course, we want to be adding the diversity that's found in the worm manure, which is full of that healthy microbiology that needs to be in soil. So really critical to appreciate that that this is what's happening in the soil, and that plants in fact don't get their nutrients directly from the mineral matter, and they need to have that middleman. They need to have those microbes, otherwise they're really out of luck. And on the audio, I am getting some notice that the internet's not stable from my end.
I still hear it a bit choppy. It's all right though, but please write in the chat if you have trouble hearing.
Okay, great. So if there's a problem with the internet or the audio, please put that in the chat. We did, of course, have some bad weather, as most people did overnight. So I'm wondering if that's affecting what's going on here. Okay, so today we're talking about herbs, and in particular, we're going to be talking about a few herbs in particular. I put my head together with Kat before the presentation and really wanted to get her direction around which, given we only have a bit of time, which 3 herbs would she, think would be best to speak to. So we're going to talk to 3 herbs specifically. But more generally, herbs are really considered medicinal plants, although all types of plants can be considered medicinal. And often they're very fast growing, although it really can depend, because they do fall into all the different categories of plants. And traditionally, they have been used for a variety of purposes beyond whatever their nutrient value is. And believe it or not, I think there's almost like 100 different types of herbs. I could be lowballing that. In fact, I know there is a Canadian Herb Society for those that are really interested in learning more about herbs. We often think of them primarily as herbs that we use for cooking or culinary purposes, but I'm really excited because Kat's going to speak to some of the other ways that we can put herbs to work beyond simply adding them to our food or for their particular flavor. And of course, initially, Kat was interested in speaking to all the naturalized native herbs that grow pretty much everywhere and anywhere. So We were looking at maybe talking about dandelions, for example, but ultimately we decided to focus on some of the herbs that are considered more suited for a variety of purposes, and that are really ones that you would want to plant and tend to and grow both indoors and outdoors. But I can assure you that even the plants we traditionally call weeds, like a dandelion, serve a variety of purposes. I quickly threw in a recap here from last week, because a lot of herbs can be propagated through propagation that we spoke to last week. And this is where you're essentially usually taking a cutting from a plant, and then ultimately you regrowing a copy, an identical copy of the first plant using that cutting. And what's important here, of course, is that where you take that cutting from, you do want it to be below the node, which is where a number of the leaves will stem off from the main branch. As we see here, this works really well for particular herbs like mint, basil, rosemary, and lavender. Of course, with mint, anybody that's grown mint, you never really have too much trouble growing mint. It is, in fact, a lot of people have trouble keeping mint from stopping to grow. And in fact, I've heard one trick to doing that with mint, because it will take over. If you put mint in a small patch of your garden, or it will within a couple of years just totally taken over all of that space and really stolen from other plants as well. And so what you can do for that is plant your mint. Like, you could purchase mint in a container, and you can cut the bottom out of the container but leave the sides. And if you drop that into a hole in the ground, and essentially as if you were planting the root ball, but you've left the wrapping, the plastic container, that's going to help prevent that mint from taking over. So that is one thing really with mint. You're more concerned about ensuring it doesn't totally take over, versus these other herbs where you may want to look at propagating them from cuttings, and then of course transplanting them into soil. We always suggest to add a bit of worm manure, because we know that not only in terms of microbes, but in fact natural plant hormones and also stress reduction is all going to be improved when you're able to use a biological fertilizer. The other option for propagating your herbs, again, that we discussed last week, was around dividing. So when you have a full container that really is overflowing and you need to create some more room, then you can always split that root ball. Some are able to be split just by hand, while others do require, you would want some kind of a serrated edge to help you cut through some of those tougher roots, and then repotting them that way. In terms of just general tips before we get into the three specific herbs that we're going to review today, it is one important piece to appreciate is that pruning herbs will actually make them more lush and will increase the yield. So don't be concerned that you're taking too much from the plant, or that you're going to run out of a particular herb. It's really, most herbs are actually the opposite, where they want to be pruned back, and that in fact will prevent them from not necessarily growing up, but actually have them growing in a horizontal direction, which will create more leaves and ultimately more yield of that particular herb. Another key point would be to snip off flower buds. And again, remember that a flower is the way that a plant reproduces. They continue their lifespan, their genetic code, by producing seeds through the mechanism of flower creation. The downside to this, of course, is that as soon as a plant produces a flower, that is where it is focusing its energies. That is where it's going to be sending the majority of its resources, its nutrients, because that's the next generation. that's how it continues. That's ultimately survival of the fittest is in that flower. So whenever we want to be increasing the yield of non-flower components of the plant, or we want to increase, for example, the nutrient density of other parts of the plant, we do want to snip off those flower buds as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the plant undoubtedly will be putting all its energy towards that flower. The nice thing about herbs is that generally you don't have to be too concerned about pests. And again, this is because they have those beautiful aromas. A lot of herbs, as we know, can be used as natural pest deterrents. So this is another place to look if you are wanting to stay off the chemicals and perhaps manage any potential pest issues in your garden or indoors. Always take a look, are there particular herbs that I could be growing in the same planter or in the same vicinity that would ultimately naturally deter the pests rather than having to resort to something more chemical or more toxic. As always, we want our container plants to have drainage. This is really, really critical because when there isn't drainage, we're going to increase the likelihood of root rot. And in particular, a lot of herbs generate from or originated, from Mediterranean climates or climates where they have drier soil. So we'll see that in just a moment. However, we really, really do always want to be concerned with overwatering when it comes to herbs. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, when folks tell me that they're having challenges with their plants, and I do some inquiry, it's often because they are in fact overwatering. So remember that plants really do like to have their soil dry out between when they're soaked for their watering. Few other tips here. I think the biggest one I want to touch on, because we really haven't had a chance to speak to this in previous sessions, is around grow lights. And if you are the type of person that wants to have herbs growing all year round, and as I said, a lot of them did come from tropical or Mediterranean climates, they are used to a lot of sunlight. They do want a lot of sunlight. And the best way to ensure this is going to be through some grow lights. And when you are looking for grow lights, there's a few key tips or things that you want to look for. Not all lights are particularly effective as grow lights. So you do want the full spectrum, and waves of red and blue are critical. And there's a couple of different types that you can look at when we're talking about grow lights. The fluorescent certainly are the most popular. And they ultimately, that's because they're the least costly. And you are going to be looking for a CFL, a T5, or a T8 fluorescent light. You certainly can then invest if it's the type of thing you're going to be doing on an ongoing basis. You may want to consider looking at LED grow lights. They are a little bit more expensive up front, and however, they use less electricity over time. So with the fluorescents, you're paying more in electricity costs, versus an LED grow light over the long term is going to be using a lot less energy. Neither fluorescents or LEDs create a lot of heat. However, if you are looking at a high intensity discharge light, which chances are you're not, they're more expensive, but you do want to take a look at how much heat they may be creating. Ultimately, your best bet when it comes to light is to also buy a power bar that has an auto on-off timer. And that's going to really simplify your life. It's going to ensure those lights are not on 24/7, reduce your electricity usage, and really make it hassle-free to ensure that your plants, or in this case, your herbs, are receiving all the light to perform photosynthesis that they require. Okay, so now for the exciting part, we're going to hand things over. I'm going to allow Kat to take it from here. She's going to introduce you to the 3 herbs that we're looking at specifically today. And we did try to pick 3 herbs that are widely available, that are suitable for a variety of different environments and climates. and that also have some medicinal purposes. And we tried to pick ones as well that perhaps you're not already growing or aren't already familiar with. So on that note, Pat, I'll turn it over to you, and then just let me know when you want your next slide.
Great, thanks, Jocelyn. So I'm so excited to be able to talk about these plants, not just because they are medicinal and it allows us to make our own medicine and be free from relying on anyone else, and to grow our medicines naturally and organically, and to become a little more self-sufficient in that way. And also because the three plants that I chose are native or naturalized to North America and have been used by indigenous peoples in Americas for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So they really have a long history, these plants, of being on this land. So the first one, I know some of you, I've heard you already mentioned that you have some of these in your yard, is the wild bergamot, also known as bee balm or Oswego tea. There's a few other names for it. The bees love it, which is why one of the names is bee balm. So it's really great for pollinators. It's in the mint family. So I always like to mention the botanical name, Monarda fistulosa, just because plants tend to have a lot of different common names. So you don't want to get confused, especially if you're using it for medicine. You want to make sure you have the exact species that you're looking for. So Monarda fistulosa, that's the one I'll be talking about. So they grow in well-draining soil. And because they have been growing in North America, they're really easy to grow outside, especially because they're used to these conditions and used to our climate. So they like well-draining soil. They're also drought tolerant. That being said, they do need to be watered if you're planting it newly, especially from seed or from a transplant. You do want to make sure you're watering all your freshly planted plants at the beginning, but really make sure that you're not overwatering, like Jocelyn said. That can kill your plants with kindness, because they can develop root rot. So really important to have well-draining soil, indoors or out. So most flowering plants, so a lot of the medicinal plants are flowering plants, and they do prefer full sun, although they can tolerate some partial shade as well. Or you can substitute with grow lights. You can start these from seeds. That's usually the most inexpensive way. Or you can purchase some seedlings from, I know there are a lot of really great local plant nurseries that do native plants. So watch out for your native plant nurseries, and always look for really healthy looking plants when you're buying the seedlings. And with this plant, wild bergamot, I've seen this often where it develops the white powdery mildew on the leaves, which is not it's not that bad. It's not too harmful, but you can avoid that if you really give them a lot of breathing room. So really plant them far apart from each other to allow good air circulation, and avoid overhead watering. So you're not letting that moisture soak into the leaves. Okay, next slide, please.
I just
Yeah,
want to add one quick thing here, Kat, which is, in
sure.
case folks don't know, one way to help prevent things like powdery mildew, which are generally an airborne pathogen that's landed on a leaf and then been able to colonize, is to ensure that your plant is covered with the microbes. So this is not something we talk about as much. It's not as widely appreciated, but just like the microbes will provide first aid or SOS in the soil, they actually serve a very similar function when they cover the plant, and they provide a layer of protection, almost like a wall, that prevents any kind of powdery mildew spore or other type of spore from ever actually reaching the leaf and then being able to enter and colonize. So what you can do is with the worm manure, you can soak it, or with our soil aid tea kit, you can make a compost tea. And essentially, those are liquid natural microbial fertilizers that you can then apply as a foliar spray to get that microbe coverage all over your plant. So just quickly wanted to throw that in there.
Great, yes. And that's a really good point, Jocelyn, because especially if you're growing herbs and plants that you're going to be harvesting for consumption, for medicine and for eating, then you really don't want to be spraying chemicals on them. So using natural options like the microbial compost tea is a really great way to deter pests and still keep it natural and edible. So for wild bergamot, I was new to learning about this because I knew about this plant mainly for its pollination purposes, but I was really excited to learn that it also has these really great medicinal properties that have been used, like I said, for many generations in North America. So you can harvest the flowers and leaves. You can either have them fresh, use them freshly, or dry them for future use. And you can prepare them in a tea or a tincture. So I have a slide at the end to go into a few more details of how you can make your own tincture and teas. So usually you only really need 3 to 4 flowers for 1 cup of boiling water. Or if it's dried, even less, 1 tablespoon of the dried crushed plant material. So this, it's in the mint family. Oh, sorry, one more back, Jocelyn. Yeah, so it's in the mint family. So mint family is usually really good for coughs, cold, fever, congestion. You can use it internally as a tincture or in a tea or a steam inhalation. I don't know if you've ever done this, but this really helps congestion. If you just make a tea, make a really strong tea in a pot of water, and as it's steaming, as it's still hot, you can put your head over it with a towel over top and take a few deep breaths, and that really can clear the congestion. It's also antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory. So a simple tea you can use as a mouthwash or as a gargle for mouth infections or a sore throat. And it's also a carminative, which means that it's calming and soothing to your gastrointestinal system. So you can also have a tea or a tincture and take that as needed. And then, of course, as most herbs, they're high in vitamin C and A and minerals. So they're also really healthy and nutritious. So the wild bergamot, I don't know if you've ever smelled it or tasted it, but it really resembles oregano. That's another name for it, wild oregano. So you can use it anywhere that you would use oregano, and it's just a nice, healthy addition to your meals. Okay, next, please. This is one of my all-time favorite plants is echinacea, purple coneflower. It is near native in Southern Ontario, which means it's native just below the border, just south of the border. And there are 2 different species you can look for, Echinacea purpurea and Echinacea angustifolia. Those are both very medicinal. And it's the common purple coneflower. I'm sure you've seen it around. The pollinators love it as well. So this one is similar growing conditions to wild bergamot, where it's drought tolerant. It will still need watering while it's being established. And it does need well-draining soil because it can be susceptible to root rot. Again, it prefers full sun, just like most flowers do, although it can tolerate partial shade. And this one, if you snip the flowers regularly, which is called deadheading, then it'll promote more flower growth. And the great thing about this is when you pick those flowers, you can actually keep them to use for tea or to make tinctures to use as medicine. And then we'll get into, here are the medicinal uses for echinacea. So you've probably heard of echinacea being really great for immunomodulating properties, which means that it can boost your immune system or balance your immune system depending on what you need. So that's the really interesting thing about plant medicine, is that it is a lot more gentle than pharmaceuticals. Because pharmaceuticals, they take the extracts, they take certain components, certain constituents from plants, they isolate those chemicals, and then put them into a really high dose. So you're getting flooded with a high dose of a certain chemical, which is very fast acting. And we do get that, take one pill and you can feel it instantly, but then it's also harsher on our bodily system because it's such a high concentration of a certain chemical. And our bodies evolved, over the years with plants, alongside plants, which is why we can recognize when we give our body medicine in the plant form, our body recognizes it and can break it down into the components. And it has not only the benefits of this one isolated compound, but it has the benefits of the entire plant, of the whole plant. Like I was saying before, the minerals and vitamins, you're getting all of that, and you're getting all of the primary medicinal properties as well as the secondary medicinal properties, which is what can lead echinacea, for example, to be able to balance our immune system, meaning that it can either strengthen it if we need it, or it can reduce it if we're having a reaction like an allergy or hay fever or eczema or psoriasis.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
again,
I'm sorry,
mhm.
Kat, go ahead. I was just going to say when I remember when you taught me this, that even the pharmaceuticals that come from plants are just so condensed and concentrated, and don't appreciate that a lot of the different metabolites or the vitamins or the phytochemicals in fact want to interact and need to interact to be fully effective as a medicine. So I'm glad you made that point, that using the whole flower, the whole plant is really critical to getting all the benefits.
Right. And again, we can use the echinacea. Usually it's traditionally prepared with the root. But if you harvest the root, it's a pretty advanced maneuver where you might be killing the entire plant if you're not doing it carefully. So the more sustainable and much easier way is to just use the flowers, which are just as effective in what I found, um, especially in a tincture format. And you'll know that it's potent enough if it leaves a tingling sensation on your tongue, which is actually the anesthetic properties of echinacea. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. Even if you try one of the seeds, the seeds from the middle of the flower there, you can eat one and it'll leave your tongue tingly. And that's how you know when it's a really potent, has potent medicinal properties, which is interesting because the most potent medicinal properties in plants are from plants that have actually suffered harsh conditions. So if we baby our plants too much, especially our medicinal plants and herbs, then they actually won't be as potent medicinally as if we let them, give them some tough love and let them really build up their own immune system and build up their own strength, because that is what gives us strength as well through the medicine. So again, we can use the flowers to like either immediately use them fresh for teas or tinctures, or we can dry them out to use for tinctures and teas later. So echinacea, especially if you feel a cold coming on, you can take from the tincture up to 5 milliliters every 2 hours, or drink a strong tea. And it's again really antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. So it can also be used topically if you have any infections or irritations on your skin. And then catnip. I also love this one. It was also traditionally used in North America. It's the species name is called Nepeta cataria, and it's in the mint family. So it's also related to mint. So it has a lot of the same medicinal properties as mint. And this one also needs well-draining soil, although this one doesn't want to be dried out as much as the other two plants. So you do want to water this one every week, and don't ever allow it to dry out completely, as they do need a bit more moist soil. They do prefer full sun, but they can really grow anywhere, even in shady conditions. These ones you can also propagate easily, like Jocelyn was mentioning. You can take cuttings and propagate your plant, or you can get new seeds to start your own new plants. And here, if you pinch off the flowers and actually the whole tip of the stem where the flowers start to form, then it'll make your plant grow bushier. And again, when you pinch off the flowers and when you pinch off the tips of the stems, you can keep those, and those are really great for tea and tinctures as well. So you can really harvest. Yeah, the best way to harvest is to snip the tip, the top few inches of each stem. That allows the plant and triggers actually the growth hormones in the plant to make it grow bushier. So you can really heavily harvest this one, and then use it fresh or dried. And I'll go through a few methods of how you can dry it. And this one is really great for flu, cold, fever, and sinus congestion. Any of those headachy symptoms, with, again, the steam inhalation, like I was talking about with wild bergamot, really great to get those, the aromatics, that's the essential oils in there, like the smell, the aromatics of the mint is really what decongests and what really helps to soothe your respiratory system and your gastrointestinal system. So you can also drink a strong tea, or even put a poultice. So poultice is just the plant material. I usually just put it in my mouth, chew it up, or you can chop it up and just make it into a mash, and then apply it topically if you have some cramps. So if you have some stomach pains, you can even just put some of the plant matter into a tea bag and put that on, or into a sock, or just directly onto your skin and rub it around. Or again, if you have nausea, a mint and catnip is really great for a steam inhalation, for reducing that nausea and calming your gastrointestinal system. Catnip is also one of the few plants that's safe for kids to use. So this one is really great for reducing kids' fever. If you can get your child to drink the catnip tea, it does taste a bit like mint, so it is quite yummy. And it has been used traditionally to reduce fever in children because it's gentle enough to use for kids as well, which is one of the few plants. Has a lot of the other medicinals we don't recommend for children, but this one is safe. And anxiety, it's been shown to have calming, relaxing effects. So for insomnia, anxiety, and headaches, again, you can do tea, steam inhalation, or poultice, so directly onto your forehead or where you feel pain, or you can have an infused oil, which I can talk about on the next slide. And then again, if you have any swelling, sprains, strains, or itching, it's actually anti-itch and it's anti-inflammatory as well. So you can, again, put it topically on with a poultice or with an infused oil or salve. And no matter how you're taking it in, it's also going to give you a boost of vitamins A and C and minerals. So if you want to save your herbs for later, I always recommend try to use your herbs and make medicines with fresh materials as much as you can, because it's the most potent that way. Otherwise, you can store it for later for the winter if you don't have access to the fresh herbs. I like to just lay them out onto, I have a dehumidifier, so I have a few different grates. I find that's the easiest and quickest way, but if you don't have access to, you do need a lot of space to be able to put those racks down then. You can also bundle them up and hang them to dry. You do want to dry them away from sunlight, because sunlight can just destroy some of the medicinal properties. And then wait until it's really crispy, until you can really crisp up the leaves. so that you make sure all the moisture is completely out so that it won't go moldy when you're storing it. So if you're going to be using it within the next few weeks, then you can put it into a paper bag, so that it's still, if there is any moisture still, it can still air out and dry out and won't get moldy. Otherwise, if you're sure that it's completely dry, you can put it into glass and seal it with a lid to store, if you're not going to be using it for another few months or so. The same, you can, actually, sorry, if you're drying herbs, you can, I recommend using only dried herbs if you're doing an infused oil. So if you'd like to do, topical application of catnip or mint, then you can dry it first and then infuse it in oil. Simply put it in a jar with oil and let it steep for a few months. So that one takes a while, or you can gently warm it up and let the heat absorb or dissolve some of those medicinal properties into the oil. And the tincture is similar. Mhm.
Kat, is there a specific type of oil? I seem to remember you mentioning something.
So you can use anything like olive oil. I prefer sweet almond oil or fractionated coconut oil because they don't have a smell of their own, because some olive oil has a really strong scent. But yeah, if you're going to be applying it onto your skin, or if you want to take it internally, then I would use an oil that is a culinary oil that's safe for consumption, that where you like the flavor, where you like the texture, and where it absorbs nicely onto your skin.
Cool.
Yeah, but coconut oil, yeah, you want to use the fractionated one where it's liquid at room temperature and not solid. And then tinctures, also very easy to make. You just fill. There are some, this is the folk method that I'm showing you, but there are some scientific methods. So you can look up actual recipes online with the exact weights if you're into that. Otherwise, I simply fill half of a glass jar with the fresh or dried herb, really finely chopped to maximize the surface area. And then you cover it with alcohol. You can use simply vodka from the liquor store. Make sure all of the herb is covered. Then you want to put the lid on and store it in a dark place, again, away from sunlight. And this, yeah, 6 to 12 weeks, so it does take a while. And you do want to shake it as much as you can just to infuse it as best as possible. And but once you've done that, you can strain it, and that'll keep it's shelf stable for about 7 years. So you've made your own medicine that you can now use anytime for up to 7 years. And I recommend the getting those dropper bottles, so you can get glass bottles with the dropper. Those are just really easy to administer then. Otherwise, you can just keep it in any sealed jar and take it by tablespoon or teaspoon as needed.
Okay, thanks, Kat. That was awesome. And I have a feeling there's going to be lots of questions for you because, it's clear that you have tons of knowledge to share with everyone here. So in terms of homework, we do have a question here. We'd love for folks to take a look at what 3 medicinal herbs that they could start growing this year. So herbs that would be new to you would be really an interesting thing to hear about. And perhaps there's ones in particular that you want to grow to help manage particular symptoms, or perhaps you want ones that double as pollinator plants. So would love to hear next week which herbs you choose to get started on for this season. And of course, we do have our usual Jocelyn's Growing Group promo. So something you've heard quite a few times through this session is the importance of growing your herbs in well-draining soil, and that this is really, really critical to ensure that the moisture level is correct. And so the potting soil that we sell, our raw regenerative potting soil, has been scientifically formulated to have that good, strong, well draining property. And certainly, that is common. Most potting soils do reflect this common requirement, because in any kind of container, there's always a concern that there can be root rot. But we did want to speak to specifically that we have ensured that our potting soil meets this requirement. And I think it was interesting that Kat spoke to this idea that plants out in nature are when they are a little bit more stressed out, they in fact produce more metabolites, more photochemicals, more of the good nutrients that make them better and stronger medicine. And the science is now showing us that this is ultimately a direct result of the microbial life providing that first aid, providing that SOS, and delivering the on-demand nutrients to the plant exactly when they need them. And our potting soil, unlike most potting soils, is a living potting soil. So it has that biological diversity that's going to ensure that your plant is as strong and as concentrated in terms of beneficial nutrients as it possibly can be. And it was interesting. I was on a cannabis panel a couple weeks ago. Of course, cannabis being another type of medicinal herb, and I was mostly with growers that grow inside in what would be considered indoor controlled agriculture or vertical agriculture. And the downside to that is that their plants are babied, and they don't really undergo any stress. And when you look at that in comparison to an outdoor plant, cannabis plant in particular, what we're seeing is there's a lot more of those secondary and tertiary metabolites, things like terpenes, aromatics, everything that makes it taste and smell so delicious. So, it's true, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and plants definitely show us that as well. So if you wanted to try the potting soil, we've got the 5-liter bag on special. You save $5. You're going to use the code herbs. That's at soilbooster.ca. And it is only eligible till 11:59 tonight. So with that, I think we will wrap up. Of course, please reach out if you have questions. Throw them in the chat right now. I'm sure Kat has taken a quick look at them. And as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, next week will be our final Jocelyn's Growing Group for this spring session. And we will be talking about transplanting, because I wanted to make sure we got that in. Well, cold weather crops certainly can be transplanted outside. We're a little bit early, but there are some key things to know and to be aware of. So I wanted to make sure we got the transplanting topic in before the end of the session. So with that in mind, Kat, is there anything in the chat that you wanted to, any questions directed to you, or did you want to send some to me?
I don't see any questions, so if anyone has any, they can unmute themselves and ask now. Oh, Jesse.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a quick question. Thank you very much for an amazing presentation. I bought from Canadian Tire one of those tables that has like little areas to put to plant things, and I thought it would be the perfect herb growing table. But what I'm hearing from your presentation is that I really need proper soil drainage, and I think these are only, well, they're like 4 by 6 areas of planting, but they're only about 4 inches deep. So, and it's covered with a kind of a material, a black cloth. So I don't know what the drainage would be like. I did grow herbs in them last year, and they all grew very big and full bloom, but I don't think anything's coming back. Yeah, like I had to get rid of them all and then start again. So anyhow, just wondering if that's still a good thing to keep using or not. Or if I have to keep replanting my herbs every year.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Kat will, may have something to weigh in as well. I mean, if the herbs were growing last year, then there's no reason why you can't continue or replant and grow them again this year if you're happy with the turnout. I do wonder if the black fabric, it sounds like it, do you know if it is porous or would allow, for example, for air or water exchange?
So when I water them, the water does drain through. Yeah, it comes through.
Oh, great. Okay, so then you're good. You're in the clear there
Okay.
because yeah, so there is some drainage happening, which is really what's important. So if there's not going to be any standing water at the bottom of
Mhm.
that cup. So that's really what's critical. I'm surprised that some of your herbs didn't come back, although if they were all, well, even annuals, they, was this outdoor or indoor?
I have them outdoor. Yeah.
Okay, so it
So
was
the
outdoor. Okay.
yeah, and so it was fine, but it was the first year I grew them, and I didn't think that I should maybe take them in and look after them, and then anyway, I was wondering if I should still be using it. It was the first year, first new seed. I just planted from seedlings as well, so they
Mm.
really had a head start, I think. And I was happy with it, but for ongoing years, I just want to know if that's kind of a good thing to do, or should I transplant them into like my proper garden where there's
Yeah,
roots?
no, I mean, I think the nice thing about herbs, a lot of people like to keep them, and certainly in terms of permaculture practices, you want to keep them as close to the kitchen as possible. And the only thing I might suggest is trying to bring the table, I guess, in the fall, because a lot of those herbs should then be able to survive. Maybe you'll need to add a grow light, but if you have a sunny south window, they should in fact be able to stay alive. I mean, I know we had some rosemary which wouldn't survive outdoors, but it certainly has lived through the winters
Mhm.
indoors. And Kat actually wanted a slide where we talked about moving outdoor herbs inside for winter, and I cut it because I was like, we're not gonna have enough time, Kat. So I don't know, Kat, do you have anything to add?
I agree with what you've said. If it works for you, then continue, and yeah, just stay away from the like Jocelyn was saying, as much of the plastics as you can.
Yeah. So this is a cedar table and it has fabric. So I'll just use it again. Yeah, thanks very much for that. I appreciate
For
it.
sure, for sure. Kat, did you see there is a question? Gloria asked about the marshmallow plant.
Great. Yes. Yeah. Marshmallow, Althea officinalis, that is a medicinal plant, definitely. Um, the roots as well as the aerial parts, so the leaves and flowers, they have very similar properties. I would say the root is a little more demulcent, which means it's a little more thick and gooey and soothing, that really soothing gel-like substance for all the internal like respiratory and gastrointestinal systems and urinary systems, versus the leaves. The leaves are actually one of the few plants where they have that as well. So they have that demulcent soothing property, and they're also expectorant, which they, at the same time as soothing, they also clear mucus. So they're really great for bronchitis or respiratory issues like that. Um, and I found the tea tastes different, so that's one of the differences. But the good part is if you harvest just the leaves and flowers, then you can continue to harvest that over and over, versus the root, you are going to be harming the plant. And it is a lot of work to dig up the roots. You have to make sure the plants are at least reached maturity. So they have to be quite a few years old before you can start harvesting the roots. And it's a lot of dirty work to really dig them up, and you really have to clean them and scrub them and then dry them properly and then chop them up. So I would say the probably for most uses, the roots and leaves, the leaves and flowers work just as well as the roots. Also for skin, they're really great for soothing internal and external, anything that needs soothing that is irritated.
Great. Thank you, Kat.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Okay, so I think unless I see any other questions, I believe that was
Oh, we
that
have
was all.
Heather
Oh,
raised a
yep,
hand.
yep. Heather, go ahead.
Not really just a question. I just wanted to show something that we do with our garden herbs. I don't know if you can see this. There's not much left of it, but that was a whole bottle of vodka. And we use
Wow.
lovage, we grow wild ramps, wild leeks in our yard. So we use some ramps. We use any of the aromatics, celery leaves, carrot tops, chili peppers. And we put those all in like a whole jar of vodka like that, and we let it sit for several months. And I call it medicinal, but I would also call it very tasty in a Caesar. So just like to extend your tincture a little bit. And it was a way to make something that is healthy and also, you know, a little bit fun. So I thought I'd share that.
Cool. Yeah. And zero waste, like you're reusing your carrot tops and little bits of things. So I think that is definitely worthy of the bag of worm manure giveaway, because we love a little show and tell around here. So congratulations, Heather. You can direct message Kat with your address. We'll get that shipped out to you. And you can use that on your the variety of things that you're growing for your bootleg liquor there. I like that. That was a great. Oh, so Kat, there does one more quick question. I know we're out of time here, but someone's asking about the benefits of hyssop.
Yeah, that's a really great plant. Similar to the mint family, so similar to the wild bergamot and the catnip. That's the beauty about plants. If they're in the same family, they often have similar medicinal properties. So really good for clearing the respiratory system, coughs, colds, headaches, and soothing for the digestive, and soothing for both respiratory and digestive system as well.
Awesome. So I know Kat's not going to do this for herself, so I'm going to do it for her, which is to plug her knowledge, her expertise. I'm even sharing her, nope, that was shared directly to JR, but I'm going to share her Instagram to everyone. She is, as of yet, not in an official capacity as an herbalist, but as you can tell, she is very passionate, very knowledgeable. I wish we'd had time to do her whole session, because we were lucky enough here where she actually gave us 3 workshops and we really learned a lot. And but you know, please reach out to her directly, and either through her Instagram, which I put in the chat, or you can of course reach her through her Waste Not email. If you have further questions, if you want to work with her, we're you know, pushing her to do this great passion work that she's obviously very good at. So so with that, I'm going to wrap things up, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone for our last session next Wednesday at noon. See you then, folks.